I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hey, we're back. What's up, guys? Welcome back. This song, every time it starts to play after watching the show, I'm just kind of like, what?
It gets me ready.
Yeah, it does get me ready. Well, welcome, guys. Welcome back.
Yes.
This is obviously the Kidding After Show. We're going to be reviewing episodes 7 and 8, but of course, first of all, let's get to who we are and who you're listening to. I mean, we're great. I mean, come on.
Important for this review.
Yes, and I'm also humble, so I'm going to let you go first. Introduce
okay.
yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, so I am Belle Blankenship. I think one of the first things that really kind of got me into the show is I'm a really big Mr. Rogers fan. I've seen all the episodes.
Yes.
Over time, of course. There's a lot of them.
And she is well researched as well. Every time she just comes super prepared, and she has details and our news segment, which she'll be doing. Yes, Belle takes it seriously. We really appreciate it. I'm DeAnJilo. I was so into Kidding. I binge watched it season 1 so I can catch up for season 2 to review the show. So I'm super excited to be with you guys.
Yes. And also just as kind of an intro, we'd love to have your comments on YouTube. Please join us in the live chat. You know, thumbs up, subscribe, however you want to interact with us. We love to have you. I love giving out shout outs.
Yes.
So please continue to interact with us.
We'll be doing some shout outs later on today.
Absolutely,
yeah. We got the live chat going, so if you guys have any questions for us, let us know.
Yes.
But we'll sit. So let's get into it.
Right.
First of all, so we have episode 7, which is called The Acceptance Speech, and a little bit later we'll be getting into episode 8, which is called The Seat on a Rock. But overall, we talked about this a little bit already. These are probably our favorite 2 episodes of the season.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
I mean, as I said in our review, I really think they kind of overcompensated after last week. I mean, maybe there are some of you out there who really loved last week, which is great. But
Ariana Grande, you know,
that's true. But I really think, I mean, there were just lots of twists in this one. It's getting really dramatic. So I'm a big fan.
That's what I was going to ask you. What were some of the elements you enjoyed that kind of stood out? Real quick, we'll go over that.
Oh, yeah. I think, of course, as we get into, especially the first episode, I really want to get into kind of that nursing home and the nostalgia therapy idea. I think we have differing opinions on it.
I can't wait to talk about that.
So it's a big one.
I'm with you. Well, and I think, the elements that we saw in this episode, how we got character development, we got story development, but this show is... do I want to say they're smart? I think the points they bring up are so interesting, but it's weird, and it fits into the theme of the show, and I'm just starting to get a new love and appreciation after these 2 episodes. They really killed it, and they're setting up a great season finale for next week. But you spoke about it already. We're going to talk about, so in the acceptance speech, we got introduced to the idea of nostalgia therapy, mainly introduced by special guest character Tyler, the creator, who had to show some acting chops in this performance, which is cool. We'll get into that. But so nostalgia therapy basically is people who are on early onset dementia, or maybe a little further on, they build a reality based on what they believe, as opposed to doing therapy. So basically the setting was like the 60s, and they just kind of went along with it, and it was interesting. How did you feel about nostalgia therapy?
I personally thought it was a wonderful idea. I don't think DeAnJilo agrees. I think because I love how Tyler describes it. He said it's compassionate deception. So, they know that. I guess everyone
lying to them. Is that the nice way?
It's true. They are lying to him, but he kind of explains that. From an outside perspective, it does feel like lying, but it's really just kind of playing up sort of their own reality. And I really think that was the kind of the overarching theme, especially of this episode, was kind of just how do you accept reality? And if one reality just feels so real, is it still okay to accept it? And we see that with Seb and his man friend who he thinks is his wife. And so for me, I thought it was just a really cool way to kind of cope with those things. And, I feel like it doesn't really hurt anyone. There were some moments where suddenly some of the dementia patients came to and were like, who the hell are you, Jeff? And so there were those awkward moments, but I just thought that whole idea was really creative and really played on the theme of the show, for sure.
I don't think Yeah, well, I have a lot of problems with it.
Okay, let's hear it.
Mainly the idea of lying in general.
Okay.
Because it is compassion, whatever the heck he said.
I love it.
But I get it. They can't control that.
Yeah.
But I think my bigger issue with if this actually existed, there would be no pursuit of a cure for this.
Sure.
This would be like a stopgap, or maybe they'd still be pursuing a cure. But like, if society was okay with this reality, I don't think there would be a pursuit of like trying to make this better. But it was cute. It was cute until it wasn't cute when like they came back to reality, and you're like, that would be a very stressful job.
Yeah, which I guess, well, I loved how they kind of set it up because, it opens up where obviously we have the Pickle Wiggler store toy, which it's a great little addition to the show.
Yeah.
And then we see that, they're supposed to be going to this lifetime achievement speech. And then we see Jeff as a bartender. And it was a little confusing at first, but I love how they did it because first, they're talking about Nixon and Kennedy. And we're like, what? Has this show been set in that time the whole time?
Yeah.
And so, and then I love where he kind of goes in the back. That's where we're introduced to Tyler, the creator. And they pour sweet tea in the little bottles. So that's where you can kind of tell, like, oh, okay, something isn't quite right around here. And I feel like for Jeff, this is a really great opportunity to still kind of be in this imaginary world like he always has, but just to still kind of take a break away from Pickle Time because obviously it's been pretty dramatic for him with the death of the Filipino pickle. And so I think for him, this was just, I think he needs to be in this kind of environment where he's playing in some way. And he loves it. I don't know if all the other staff members are totally jived about it all day, but when he's dancing with that old lady, he was like, this is fantastic. I love it. And then,
I think it's interesting. Well, there's a lot that I want to unpack when it comes to that because he came to a whole revelation. But before we even did that, I wanted to touch on Tyler, the creator, really quickly because we'll also talk about someone else's performance for episode 9, which you guys already know at this point. But so when it came to Tyler, the creator, how did you feel about? Because we saw Ariana Grande last week. She didn't have to actually just sung. How did you feel about him as an actor?
Yeah, I guess I didn't really know if Tyler had any acting chops or not. I mean, I love his music, but I really thought he did a great job.
Did.
Like, I think he just really kind of embraced his character, and it wasn't a whole lot. There were just a few scenes with him, but I felt like he loved it.
He
I think he
held
loved
his own.
being
Jim
there.
Carrey next to him, like he was like a legend.
I think this was a great role for him too.
I love that Kenny is becoming like an outlet for like stars to get some chops in.
Absolutely.
How cool is that? So shout out to you, Tyler, the creator. You did your thing, bro.
Heck yeah.
So how did you feel about? I'm gonna stay just in this setting because we were with Jeff, and Jeff was basically there most of the time, and we're like, why is he there? What is he seeking? He ends up speaking to the lady who's at a bus. And he like sits down and he says, I'm your son. And she looked at him and like, no way. And they get into this whole dialogue. Come to realize that it is probably definitely his mom, right?
Oh, yeah.
We can agree on that.
Oh, for sure. I also want to give a shout out on our live chat because we're not the only ones who obviously picked up on that. Billie Jean Girl 24 has been loyal every week. She says we finally met Jeff's mom and she doesn't even remember him. It's really sad. I could not agree more. Like that scene, I just feel like that had to be absolutely devastating for Jeff because I'm wondering if I don't know how long he's known that his mom was there or if this was happenstance. I feel like he had to have gone to this place because he knew she was there. But I wonder, like, had he visited her before? Is this the first time we're seeing them react or interact with each other?
Yeah, because you seem really sure about it.
Yeah,
So how did you, I love the dialogue that they had. And by the end, he's like, I need to go home. How did you feel about that conversation?
Oh, it was so sad because I feel like his whole life, I mean, his mom leaving their family has kind of been his way, his puppets have been his way to cope through all of this. And that kind of, again, plays on this accepting reality thing. And I feel like his whole life, he's kind of been, just wanting to believe that she must have just left because there is just a happier place and she still loves them and it's nothing they did. And then she basically breaks it to him that, he and Deidre have been paperweights the whole time. And like she was literally trying to escape. Yeah. And he kind of tries to convince her at the beginning, like, no, but, you know, they were probably great kids. And then she just, that had to have been heartbreaking. Yeah. And you saw his face but at the same time, I feel like that's what he needed to hear.
Yeah.
To be able to move on, and be like, okay, well, this is reality. I guess she
After
never really cared.
She didn't deal with reality. I'm not her.
Right.
Because just saying like, that statement, the bus, all you have to do is make a decision and get on the bus, and the bus always comes. And she's literally waiting for a bus that will never arrive.
Never come.
And he's like, I need to.
Like, I gotta get out of here.
How awesome is that? And I think that's why we really enjoyed this show. It really showed it made its points in such a smart way.
Yeah.
It wasn't preachy, but like still got its point across. That was so absolutely awesome, and they killed that performance.
Oh, for sure. And I also love because they really had, I think, both of us going during kind of the Seb interaction with his wife.
I can't wait to get into that.
Yeah, because that's why I was so confused when he sees her like at the hospital, and we were like, wait.
Yeah.
But so I loved how at the whole time Jeff was with their real mom, and then Seb's actually kind of been with this actor.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait. We'll probably get in more to that when we get to episode 8, just because it poured over. So I can't. But that is interesting because it helped us understand what was going on with Jeff. But I wanted by the time Jeff left, because all while this is happening, he is supposed to be getting an acceptance speech, getting an award, and he has to give this acceptance speech. We don't even know if he's going to arrive. Right. Everyone's doing, like, Seb's doing his own thing. He never arrives. So Deidre's there.
Bless her.
I know. And her and Jill have a moment. A lot happened. But before I get to Deidre, Jeff and Jill had, they had an interaction where he, like, decides to go to an acceptance speech. They have this moment. They look at each other. She keeps going. Yeah. He turns around and he's like, "Should I chase her?" Basically, and he doesn't. How did you feel about that moment? Were you rooting for him? Like, you wanted him to go get her? Like, where were you at?
I think, to me, I think this really also kind of shows how fate is kind of intertwining in this show, and how I think, to me, that was kind of reflective of Will's magic kind of book. And I was like, okay, like, so they their lives are still kind of coming together. I still don't know how it's going to end, if they will end up. But, I mean, poor Jeff. I think honestly, it was the best move to just not chase her, because he has been doing it the whole time.
I'm so different from you. Like, I don't know, you heard me. I was like, go get her. Which is interesting. I don't know. Maybe you're not like this, but I still find myself rooting for that relationship. After everything that's happened.
Deep down, I really want them to be together. But I hate seeing Jeff suffer, and I feel like every time he does try again, he just gets more and more hurt. Yeah. And so. Yeah. To me, I was just like, oh, well, if he tries it again, he's just going to get hurt all over again. I was like, I don't want to see him that way. Because he's been doing great. Honestly, even after kind of that revelation from his mom, he took it pretty well. Yeah.
To, like, deal with, deal with this stuff.
Oh, yeah. He's had some really bad reactions.
Well, he had to have known she was already there. I'm imagining. Maybe he sometimes goes to talk to her.
Right. So I'm this may not be the first time
maybe he already
they've
knew
talked.
that part. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Right.
That was interesting. I really wanted to get your opinion on that, because
I'd love it to happen, but I think more so I just don't like seeing him hurt. And I was like, you know what? It's probably just the best way to go. If they're meant to be together, they will be together, and it'll work out. I don't know how, but
so the last thing that happened in that episode, and then, by the way, guys, after we do this, we have some special segments for you guys. We have, like I told you, Bella's well prepared, and she has a news segment for you guys. I'll be doing our Jim section segment where we'll be comparing one of Jim Carrey's movies with the episodes here. So look forward to that. But final thing with this episode, at the end, Jeff he in his speech says, "It took me a long time to realize I was choosing between family and work." And he's like, I finally forgot which one, because one thing's a fantasy. Yeah. Cut the camera to where his family's supposed to be sitting. No one's there.
So you're like, what is this?
I know. Like, so how did you feel? Which insinuates that he'll pick his job. How do you even feel about that?
Yeah, and that's another, I think, just really brilliant thing that kind of they did with this episode, where they kind of leave you hanging or just kind of confused, and you're like, wait, like, you think the obvious choice is he's going to say his family, but then when it kind of pans to nobody but Deidre, which shout out, like, Deidre went
Deidre
through
wasn't
the
even
ringer,
there.
but she came at the end
Yeah.
after the whole pickle incident. So
Did she come back? Oh, I didn't
she
see
did,
her.
yeah. She like sat in the side, but nobody else was there.
Huh.
And so yeah, so then I'm like, well, maybe he's gonna choose like Pickle Time. I don't know. So yeah, I like how they did that and just cut it off. So it's kind of you leave it to the audience to decide.
Yeah, so shout out to the acceptance speech. Right after it ended, me and
Yeah.
Belle was like, this is
what?
probably our favorite episode.
Oh, for sure.
And episode 8 came.
Got even better.
Which we're going to get into. But first up, let's start with our news segment, yeah?
Oh, okay. All right, let's jump into it.
There's our news drop.
AfterBuzz TV News.
All right, so I have got an article to you guys from the LA Times, so please check them out if you want more info from them. But they gave us a special sneak peek into the hard work it takes to be a puppeteer on the show. I think we're so focused on the actual human actors, we don't get to see what the puppeteers go through. And so you may or may not know there are about 16 puppets who make up the cast of Puppet Time. And among them are some of the puppets named Oops, Soap Scum, and the heart-shaped Thump Thump. But while the children's show has an air of childlike lightness, the puppet performers make clear that they are not joking around in their work. So we have Dan Garza, who plays Ennui, who said it's not a puppet show. We're emoting very true performances. If we fail to do so, we're never going to connect with our viewers. Then it's just an act. And then Hollander, who plays Astron Otter, also comments, the costume is heavy. There's a fan inside the head that is resting on the shoulders. I can't hear in there. I have to have headphones. The back of my neck is the only place I can hear if someone wants to talk to me. And then Jim Carrey also made a statement saying that he was actually particularly...
Has been on a date. We're seeing two views. One that looks like the ex-wife and one that looks like a black, very handsome black man.
For sure.
So I'm a little confused on what the heck is going on. What is your interpretation?
Yeah, so I have been interpreting this as somebody from, I guess, the nursing home. I mean, I thought that basically they could only do it, like, they could only kind of do these acting things in that kind of nursing home area. So it's kind of interesting that he's actually, like, you know, his lover right now is, like, actually not at the home. Like, he's in the world with Seb.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think it is so, and it kind of just shows maybe how serious this actually is for Seb, but I'm confused. I'm like, does nobody know? Like, surely someone has seen him go back. I mean, Maddie maybe. I think, and that now it makes sense because I remember at the hospital, he was like, that's Grandma. She was like, there's no way that's Grandma. And I didn't think about it. Yeah, until now it's like, oh.
But then she encouraged him to go.
Yeah, she was like, go. She was like, oh, don't worry, I'll kill myself.
This is their interpretation of him having early onset, maybe dementia.
Right, which is, I
think
think this is going to be huge for the last 2 episodes, to be honest.
It looked like it in the trailer. I mean, you know, this family is not really monitoring each other too much, so it's not too surprising.
True.
But the articulation of it is just so interesting and funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess there's not much there. We just, except for Seb is, you know, slowly losing his memory.
Yeah.
So maybe he'll get reunited with his ex-wife. Apparently, he still loves her.
Right, which is also kind of crazy that, you know, his ex-wife really is that. It just feels like they're so close yet so far away.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, his real ex-wife is there, but, you know, now he's kind of with this actor. So I wonder if they actually will, like, if he'll end up going to the home or something and they meet in real life, or if he comes to his senses. But he made it sound like when he was telling Will at the door that, you know, if you only have 3 to 24 hours to live. So I'm like, what? Is Seb about to, like, get out of here? So
yeah, he's like,
I don't know.
I'm busy.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I loved
so
it.
Another cool thing they did here in episode 8 that I really enjoyed was flashbacks to tell a story. We got insight into how Pickle Time started.
Yes.
From the Challenger exploding.
Yeah, yeah.
We got a little bit insight into Deidre's backstory. How did you feel about the flashbacks, and did these flashbacks give you any new revelations on the characters?
Yeah, and I think that's another thing they do in certain episodes. Like we saw them do a lot of flashbacks in the episode where it kind of goes back to Jeff and Jill having the babies, and that was another episode I really loved. And I think every time they bring back flashbacks, I love it.
We're noticing a theme here.
Yeah, and I love how in this one they go forward and then backward a little bit. So you see, for instance, like Will at his grandpa's door, and then it kind of like fast forwards, and then we see it kind of from Seb's point of view. So you keep seeing everything from different points of views.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
I think with the whole, I thought it was just beautiful. And now I see why, especially for Deidre and Astronauter, why that's such an important puppet for her, because it looked like her very first puppet for the show. And sort of, the Challenger explosion was really what that, and I never would have thought, but that was like what set the course for the show altogether. That was what made Jeff decide he's got to use TV in a good way. And Deidre was like, okay, I'm not going to go to Japan. I'm going to pursue this life. And you just kind of, and you kind of wonder, what if they had taken a different path? Like, what if Deidre had gone to Japan? How would her life have been? Maybe she never would have been with Scott, and this never would have been the situation.
No, it is so interesting. And I think that Jeff's words when he's talking to Jill about like marrying Peter, like trying to convince her, he's like, something's good has to happen from bad things, and like I can see how that might be his life philosophy when that happened, which was cool. I like the consistency in that. So that was super cool that they did that. Another thing that they have done is continue to get platforms for celebrities, and this time in this episode we saw Blake Griffin. Yes, who. He showed his acting chops too. He was the friend of Deidre's now ex-husband. Right. How did you feel about Blake Griffin's performance?
I think he did a good job.
But you like Tyler more.
Yeah,
Why?
I love Tyler's more.
Do you just like Tyler as a person more, or do you think he actually acted better?
I think I liked his acting more. And he just got to do, I think his lines were just a little, Blake didn't have too many lines. It was mainly, he was just kind of a backboard for Scott. Yeah. And now we're like, are Scott and Blake about to become a thing? Because that was a lot alluded to that.
I know. I was like,
oh, okay. Right. That was an interesting little thing to do with them. So
that is interesting.
Yeah. So again, like you had said earlier, I like that they kind of use kidding as a platform to get some celebrities in. Yeah. I also think it gets some eyes on the show, which is great because I love this show. Yeah. I really did. I didn't expect to, love it as deeply as I really do now.
Yeah. You see some pictures of Blake. And,
it's
Blake
fantastic.
It's awesome. So speaking of. Well, just with Jeff, right? I want to go back to this real quick.
Sure.
How do you feel about, because you said this, that, he was, we talked about him trying to encourage Jill to marry Peter, which is just weird when you think about it.
Yeah.
How do you even feel about that? Like, are you on it? You think Jeff is like an incredible human being for doing that? Or you agree with Will that he should be fighting for her?
Oh, yeah. I feel like Jeff is kind of between a rock and a hard place because I think more than anything, he would love to be with Jill again. But every time, he tries.
But has he tried? Will doesn't feel like he's tried.
Yeah, that's true. Will doesn't think he has, and maybe he really hasn't tried hard enough, and maybe Will is right. But the fact that he moved next door to Jill, and
that was like all passive and like
that's
creepy.
the thing. I think he kind of just does he tries in his own way, and it's just not as evident. It's not something as obvious as just like being on his hands and knees, like, come back to me. It's just little things, or like doing that little Christmas on the Christmas episode. Yeah. Just things where I think he thinks he's trying, but maybe to everyone else it doesn't seem that way. Yeah. So I've hurt for him because I think now it's really, this is just a journey for him to maybe just accept the truth, because every time he doesn't, he ends up being way worse off. Yeah. So bless him.
That's awesome. So with there's one more thing I want to get into with this episode, but before we do that, we got to do our Jim segment.
All right.
And I really enjoy doing this because Jim Carrey has... Thank you, Ryan. Oh. Shout out to Ryan.
Yeah.
You're great. You're just cool, bro. I don't know.
Out.
You do a great job. When it comes to Jim, he just has so many cool movies that he's done. And you forget. He's had a long career that goes back to the 90s. Anyway, so this one I think is an underrated one that I remember watching a lot, but kind of forgot about now. Yeah. Fun with Dick and Jane. Yeah. With Jim Carrey, they play the character like he's a successful businessman, but then his employer goes broke. Him and his wife decide to rob a bank to make things ends meet, which is pretty bad, pretty badass. Yeah. So a couple of reasons why this reminds me of this episode. One, the haircut. He cut his hair again.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
So it's kind of cool seeing that. But in this movie, so much chaos happens. Yeah. And like there's peace in the chaos. There's moments in the chaos where it's like, and I feel like that's just like this show. It's just like craziness happening and you get like little moments of solace.
Yeah. And we got a lot. I think that is a great segue into kind of how this episode ends. Yeah. And we get into like how far this has gone, especially with like, Toyco shuts down the system,
Yeah.
and we have that whole thing.
He's got someone who's trying to burn his house.
Literally, burn his house down.
Yeah.
So I think that was a great.
I love that you said how it ended, because it's like you're reading my notes or something.
Yeah.
One thing we saw was after all of that happened, which you guys saw, the fire. Jeff saves the day. Probably won't get any credit for it. We'll see. He changed his address because no one's listening to him. Yeah. But this address is assigned to Will. Okay.
Yes.
And Will checks the box for the numbers. He's had this thing of numbers, and for some reason, it makes it seem like this is going to connect to him actually turning back time. Are you buying in on Will eventually being able to turn back time?
I'm so excited. I don't know if it's necessarily turning back time, but it's definitely something. Like
something's going to happen.
Oh yeah, and I think once we go into predictions, like I want to kind of make a guess and figure out.
Okay. Well, we only have 2 episodes. Sure. They got to do it quickly.
That's true. So they got to figure it out.
I thought they were going to resolve this way quicker. It's been the whole season.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that this has kind of just been like a side story that's been going on, and I love that they added this in.
Yes.
So
Yes.
We'll see.
An important character who we may or may not be seeing soon.
Oh yeah. Please join us next week.
Yeah.
We do have a special guest appearance.
Yes. That's all we're giving you guys.
It.
Yeah. Just check us out.
Yeah, come on back.
All right. Did you have anything else with this episode?
I don't think so. I feel like we did a pretty good job. I think I just hope that. I'm excited to see if for Deidre if she can actually get astronauter, because we did see her threaten Scott's
Deidre.
life.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a great moment
Mixed
too.
emotions about her.
Yeah.
Did her backstory, like her rejecting Japan, do anything for you? Did it give you more empathy for her?
Yeah, I think to me, I feel like this wasn't necessarily the life she would have chosen, but kind of given the circumstances that she was in at the time watching the Challenger, I think it was kind of for her the only option. So,
which is interesting, but it shows how fear can drive you in maybe the wrong direction or just a different direction.
Right.
Who knows? Good stuff. All okay. Right. Well, that will conclude our review. But we want to let you guys know where to find us on social media, because that's important. And do you want to do a prediction? Oh,
yeah. I was like, wait,
I knew I was forgetting something. This is why you're here.
Hold on.
Okay. All right.
TV prediction.
Oh.
There it is. Thank you, Ryan, so much. So we have to do our predictions, because we have 2 final episodes left. Episode 9 and 10 has been a great season. I hope I'm right about that. I'm pretty sure it's 10 episodes.
Yes, it is.
So what is your prediction for the next 2 episodes?
Yeah. So I think ultimately Jeff and Jill will be back together.
Whoa, hot take.
That is a hot take.
Oh my
but
God. Even after she told Peter that we're going to get married.
I think they're both in denial. I feel like Jeff and Jill are kind of denying themselves. Wow. So I think it is going to have something to do with Will's magic.
Yeah. Alternate reality.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe the last number is going to be where Jeff and Jill meet, or
he gets to see it maybe.
Yeah, or it's them on the altar or something. There's a number above it, something cute like that. That's my hope. And then, I really, as far as Deidre goes, I really want her to have some good luck, because she is a mess. And even with the interaction with Jill, Jill just straight says it, you're a mess.
Which is awesome. She needed a truth pill.
So I'm hoping at least maybe she can get astronauter back and maybe do something great, kind of redeem herself. So that's what I got.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you said that. Yeah, well. My prediction is that Will does turn back time. It happens. Okay. And then we get to talk. I definitely predict that we'll get to talk to him about it next week.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, no longer spoiler.
Oh, wait.
Spoiler.
No longer a spoiler.
Well, yeah, oops.
Well, now y'all know.
Yes, we have Colin
Better reason
coming
to
through.
tune in.
Yes. And Mina will be back, which is awesome. We miss you, and please join us.
Yes.
All right, now we can sign out.
All right.
So, Belle, where can they find you on social media?
So you can find me on Instagram. It is at Blankenship. That's B as in Belle, EBENSHIP.
And I'm DeAnJilo. You can find me on Instagram at DeAnJilo. That's DeAnJilo. And on Twitter at DeAnJilo TV. But do Instagram. All right, guys. Well, it was great seeing you guys. See you next week.
Yes.
Deuces.
Bye, guys.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.